All right. Buckle up, everybody. We're going deep today.
Diving right in.
Yep. Into humanity's biggest failures. This source material, it's a bit of a wake-up call, really. Lays out all the ways, big and small, we humans have messed up throughout history.
Yeah, doesn't sugarcoat anything.
But here's the thing. It's not about dwelling on the negatives. Think of it like a checkup at the doctor's office.
A diagnostic for humanity.
Exactly. We're identifying the problem areas so we can figure out, well, how to fix them.
Using the past as a roadmap, you know? So we don't keep making the same mistakes over and over again.
So first up on the list of, let's call them opportunities for improvement.
Yeah.
Ecological destruction.
Yeah, the source paints this picture of Earth as this giant puzzle, you know? Each piece is a different ecosystem. Super intricate, super delicate.
But we, being humans, I guess we like to play puzzle wrecker because we're ripping out those pieces left and right.
Trying to make them fit where they don't belong.
And the result, well, it's not pretty.
No, not at all. The source hits us with this stat. A 69% decline in global wildlife populations since, get this, 1970.
1970, that's what, like 2 generations ago?
It's like if you took a walk in the woods back then, and there were, say, 100 animals.
Right.
Now there'd be only 31 left.
Wow. That's a huge chunk gone.
It is. And it's not just about, saving the animals in some abstract sense.
Right.
This directly affects us. Food, water, the air we breathe, everything.
We kind of forget that we're part of this whole ecosystem, not separate from it.
Yeah, totally. And speaking of consequences, let's talk about climate change. It's a direct result of all this messing with the ecological balance.
And it's not like we didn't have any warning. Scientists were sounding the alarm about carbon emissions way back in the 1800s. Can you believe that?
They saw it coming, but here we are, still burning fossil fuels like there's no tomorrow.
And the ironic thing is, we've destroyed the very systems that could have helped protect us.
Exactly. Coral reefs, rainforests, wetlands, all gone or severely damaged. They're like natural buffers against climate change, and we've wiped them out.
All right, so we've messed up the planet pretty badly. What else is on humanity's list of not-so-great achievements?
Well, the force dives into something pretty heavy. War. It poses this question, and I think it's one we all need to sit with for a minute.
Okay, hit me with it.
Has humanity spent more time at war than at peace?
That's a depressing thought.
I know. And sadly, the answer is yes. Since 3600 BCE, there have only been 268 years without any recorded conflict.
Wow. That's a tiny sliver of human history.
It makes you wonder, right, about our nature, about our capacity for violence.
Well, we've tried, haven't we? Peace treaties, international organizations, all aimed at stopping the fighting. But it keeps happening.
It does. The source points to the usual suspects: greed, power grabs, ideology, and of course the weapons just keep getting more and more destructive.
And the human cost. It's unimaginable, really.
It is. Think about the 20th century. We're talking about an estimated 108 million deaths from war.
It's heartbreaking. And even when the fighting stops, the scars remain. Look at World War II. It reshaped entire societies.
Planted the seeds for future conflicts. And let's not forget about the legacy of nuclear weapons. That fear, it's still shaping global politics today.
Okay, deep breaths, everyone. Let's move on to another big one. Inequality.
Yeah, this one's tough. The source really lays it bare how, for millions of people, their life chances are basically determined from the moment they're born.
Just by accident of birth. Where you're born, who your parents are, that's it. Your potential, already limited.
It's a bleak reality for a huge chunk of the global population.
Yeah, the stats are pretty sobering. The source says that in 2021, the richest 1% controlled almost half of the world's wealth.
While millions struggled to survive on less than $2 a day, it's mind-boggling, that gap.
And it's not a static thing either, is it? Like, inequality breeds more inequality.
A vicious cycle. Poverty limits access to education, healthcare, opportunities. And then that just creates more poverty.
And even when there's economic growth, those at the bottom often don't benefit.
Right. The source uses this example of advances in medicine extending lifespans for the wealthy, while those in poverty are still struggling to access basic care.
So it's not just a moral failing, it's a failure of imagination, really.
Holding ourselves back as a species by not addressing inequality.
Think about all the potential, all the talent that's being wasted. All right, on to something that I think weighs heavily on a lot of people. Mass extinction.
Yeah, it can feel overwhelming, the sheer scale of it. The source makes this point, that nature's balance is super delicate.
But we humans, well, we're not exactly known for our subtlety.
More like a bull in a china shop,
Yeah.
right? I mean, just look at the numbers. Over 900 species gone extinct in the last 500 years. Gone because of us.
Gone forever. It's a pretty bleak track record. The dodo, the passenger pigeon.
The Yangtze River dolphin,
Mhm.
all creatures that were once part of this planet, and now they're just gone.
And the scary thing is, we're not slowing down. We're actually in the midst of what scientists are calling the sixth mass extinction.
And this time, it's not an asteroid or a volcano. It's us. Habitat destruction, overfishing, pollution. We're driving species to extinction at an alarming rate.
And we need to remember, biodiversity isn't just about pretty pictures and nature documentaries.
It's not just aesthetics. These species, they all play vital roles in the ecosystems that keep us alive.
Right, it's like taking out parts from a machine. Eventually, the whole thing stops working.
Exactly. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about something that's both fascinating and, well, a bit scary. Dangerous technologies.
Okay, yeah, technology. It's obviously been a huge driver of human progress. Fire, the wheel, the internet, all game changers.
Right, but the source makes this point. Not every invention has been a good thing. Think of it like a tool. A hammer can build a house, but it can also cause harm if it's misused.
So technology, it's a double-edged sword.
Totally. The source gives some good examples. Like fossil fuels. They power the Industrial Revolution, but look at what they're doing to the climate.
Yeah, I mean, the convenience of plastic, it revolutionized so many things, but now we're drowning in it.
Right. And another good example is antibiotics. They've saved countless lives, but overuse has led to antibiotic resistance. Now we're facing the possibility of going back to a time when a simple infection could be deadly.
Okay, let's talk about something that's been on everyone's mind lately, pandemics. The source makes this argument that COVID-19 exposed our failure to prepare for global health threats. And it's not like we haven't had warnings.
Exactly. We've had wake-up calls before. The 1918 flu, SARS, Ebola, each one was a chance to learn, to improve our global health systems.
But did we take those lessons to heart?
Well, judging by the global response to COVID, not really.
So we saw healthcare systems overwhelmed, panic buying, and of course, a tragic loss of life. It really highlighted the consequences of inaction.
It showed us, in a very real way, that global health security is something we all share, and it's something we need to take seriously.
Okay, time for a little mental image. Imagine a garbage truck full of plastic.
Okay, got it.
Now, picture that truck dumping its entire load into the ocean every minute.
Woo! That's a lot of plastic.
That's the reality we're facing. 11 million tons of plastic entering our oceans every year. By 2050, the source says there might be more plastic in the ocean than fish by weight.
Think about that. Swimming in a sea of plastic.
Not a very appealing thought. And it's not just plastic. We waste about a third of all the food we produce globally, while almost 1 billion people go hungry.
It's mind-boggling. 1.3 billion tons of food thrown away while people are starving. And landfills are a major source of methane, a potent greenhouse gas.
So waste isn't just a logistical problem, it's a climate problem too.
We're literally burying ourselves in our own garbage.
Okay, let's switch gears to a failure that's a bit more abstract but equally significant. The suppression of knowledge. Seems kind of ironic, doesn't it? Humans are naturally curious. We want to explore, to understand.
We're problem solvers, right? But for some reason, we also have this long history of actively suppressing knowledge, burying it, hiding it.
The source has some pretty striking historical examples, like Galileo being persecuted for his scientific discoveries.
Or the burning of the Library of Alexandria. Imagine all the knowledge that was lost.
And it's not just ancient history. Climate change denial is a perfect example of how powerful interests and misinformation campaigns can stall progress on crucial issues.
It makes you wonder, right? What solutions, what breakthroughs have we missed out on because we chose to ignore inconvenient truths?
Okay, ready for another heavy one? Let's talk about colonization.
Yeah, this one's tough, but it needs to be talked about. The source is very clear. Colonization reshaped the world, but at a horrific human cost.
And the effects are still felt today.
Oh, absolutely. From the 15th century onward, European empires expanded aggressively, driven by this thirst for land, resources, power, and they achieved that expansion through brutal exploitation.
It was a period of mass displacement, enslavement, and in many cases, outright extermination of indigenous peoples.
Basically, global theft on a massive scale. And the consequences, as the source points out, are still with us. Systemic inequality, poverty, political instability.
The wounds haven't healed.
Okay, let's move into the digital age and talk about a problem that's become increasingly prevalent: disinformation. The source describes it as a weapon, and I think that's pretty accurate.
It's a way to undermine knowledge, to erode trust. It's insidious. And social media, which was supposed to connect us, has become this breeding ground for lies and manipulation.
It's crazy how fake news travels so much faster than the truth. And the algorithms, they just feed us more of what we already believe, whether it's true or not.
It creates this feedback loop where people become more and more distrustful of legitimate sources of information.
Experts, scientists, even facts themselves are up for debate. And we're seeing the real-world consequences. Anti-vaccine movements, election interference, it's a mess.
Okay, let's tackle what many consider to be humanity's biggest failure of all: our inaction on climate change. The source really doesn't pull any punches here. It says future historians will likely point to this as our biggest mistake.
We've known about the risks for decades. The science has been clear, but we failed to act decisively.
And global temperatures just keep rising. We're already at 1.2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. We're seeing the consequences firsthand. Extreme weather, rising sea levels, all these cascading effects.
And the frustrating thing is, we have solutions: renewable energy, reforestation, sustainable agriculture.
The tools are there, but we're not using them effectively.
The source blames political inertia, corporate greed, short-term thinking. We're so focused on the now that we're sacrificing the future.
And climate change isn't just an environmental problem. It affects food security, economies, global stability.
It's the ultimate interconnected issue.
All right, last one for this section: our obsession with growth.
Ah, yes. The myth of infinite growth on a finite planet.
Our economic systems are fixated on GDP, which completely ignores environmental and social costs.
It's like we're trying to stuff an infinite amount of stuff into a finite box. And what happens? Resources get depleted, we create a culture of disposability, and ultimately we undermine the very systems that support life on Earth.
It's a recipe for self-destruction.
The source argues that we need to redefine what progress looks like, shift away from a purely economic focus, and prioritize sustainability and well-being.
We need to learn to thrive within the limits of our planet, not at its expense. True prosperity shouldn't just be about how much we consume. It should be about how well we're living, in balance with the natural world.
Exactly. Quality of life, not just quantity of stuff.
Okay, that was a lot. Ecological destruction, war, inequality, mass extinction, dangerous tech, pandemics, waste, suppression of knowledge, colonization, disinformation, and our obsession with growth.
Phew. Yeah, that's a pretty hefty list of failures.
Yeah. But remember, the point isn't to dwell in despair. It's to understand these problems so we can start finding solutions.
Exactly. In the next part, we'll be looking at another often overlooked crisis: mental health. And then we'll dive into some potential solutions to all these challenges. Welcome back. We've covered some pretty heavy stuff, ecological destruction, war, inequality, and the loss of so many species. And of course, technology, how it can be both amazing and dangerous.
Yeah, it's a lot to process, but the goal isn't to just wallow in all the bad stuff. It's like if you go to the doctor and they give you a diagnosis, you might not like what you hear, but it's the first step to getting better.
Right. It's about understanding the problem so you can find the right treatment. And speaking of treatment, the next failure we're going to talk about is one that often gets overlooked: our approach to mental health.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? For so long, mental health was this taboo subject, almost like something to be ashamed of.
It was seen as a weakness, a personal failing, not a health issue, And sadly, that stigma is still around today, even though we've learned so much about how the brain works.
The source makes this point that even with all the advances in neuroscience, mental health is still underfunded, under-researched.
It's like we're more comfortable talking about physical ailments than we are about what's going on inside our heads.
It's almost like it's easier to talk about a broken leg than a broken mind.
Exactly. And the source highlights this startling fact: nearly 1 billion people worldwide suffer from mental health disorders. 1 billion. But many don't have access to proper care.
That's a lot of people. And it really makes you think about whether we're truly prioritizing well-being for everyone. And then there's the tragic consequence of neglecting mental health.
Suicide. It's one of the leading causes of death globally, especially for young people.
It's a heartbreaking reminder that this isn't just an individual struggle, it's a societal problem.
When people are struggling with their mental health, it affects everyone around them. Families, communities, the whole fabric of society.
Okay, so we've delved into a lot of failures, but the source also offers some hope. It outlines potential solutions to all these challenges.
Right. It's not about just throwing up our hands and saying, well, we're doomed. It's about recognizing that we have choices. We can make things better.
Okay, so where do we start? Let's begin with ecological destruction. How do we even begin to heal the planet? It feels like such a massive task.
Well, the good news is ecosystems are incredibly resilient. They can regenerate, but they need our help. It's like imagine a garden that's been neglected, it's overgrown, the soil is depleted, but with care, with attention, you can bring it back to life.
So it's about giving nature the space and resources to heal. What about climate change? What can we do to address that? It feels so big, like individual actions don't even matter.
Well, it's true that it's a global problem that requires collective action, but every little bit helps. Think of it this way. Every time you choose to walk or bike instead of driving, you're reducing your carbon footprint.
Right.
Every time you buy energy-efficient appliances, support renewable energy, you're making a difference.
So it's about being mindful of our choices. Okay, let's talk about war. Is it even possible to break this cycle of violence? It seems like it's been with us forever.
Well, the source suggests that lasting peace requires a fundamental shift in our thinking. We need to address the root causes of conflict: poverty, inequality, the fight over resources, and we need to cultivate empathy.
Understanding. Seeing each other as human beings, not enemies.
Exactly. It's about building bridges, not walls.
What about inequality? How do we bridge that gap between the haves and the have-nots? The disparities are so vast.
Well, the source points to a few key strategies. One is ensuring everyone has access to quality education and affordable health care.
Leveling the playing field, giving everyone a chance to succeed.
Right. We also need to look at things like progressive taxation, redistributing wealth more fairly.
So those who have more contribute more to support those who have less.
And promoting fair trade practices, empowering developing countries, breaking the cycle of exploitation.
Okay, mass extinction. Can we actually reverse the damage we've done to the planet's biodiversity?
It's true that we've lost a lot,
Hmm.
and we can't bring back what's gone, but we can protect what's left.
Hmm.
The source emphasizes the importance of conservation, creating protected areas, cracking down on poaching, and reducing our impact on habitats.
It's about recognizing that we share this planet with countless other species, and their fate is intertwined with our own.
We're all connected.
Yeah. Dangerous technologies. How do we manage the risks without stifling innovation? It seems like a tricky balance.
It is. We need to be more cautious. The source talks about adopting a precautionary principle. Before we unleash a new technology in the world, we need to ask, what are the potential risks? What are the ethical implications?
So slow down, think it through. Don't just rush headlong into the next shiny new thing without considering the consequences.
Right, and let's not forget about pandemics. How can we be better prepared for the next one?
COVID-19 was a wake-up call, that's for sure.
It exposed the weaknesses in our global health systems. The source stresses the need for stronger public health infrastructure, better early warning systems,
And equitable access to vaccines and treatments. Everyone needs to be protected, not just those in wealthy countries.
Exactly. A threat to health anywhere is a threat to health everywhere.
Okay, waste. How do we break our addiction to disposability? We live in a world where everything is designed to be used once and then thrown away.
It's a tough habit to break, but the source suggests a three-pronged approach: reduce consumption, invest in better waste management systems, and redesign products. Make them more durable, more repairable.
So it's about moving from a linear economy where we just take, make, and dispose to a circular economy where resources are used more efficiently.
Right, waste becomes a resource, not a problem.
Okay, suppression of knowledge. How do we create a society that values truth and critical thinking? It seems like we're drowning in misinformation these days.
It starts with education. Teaching people how to evaluate information critically, to distinguish between facts and opinions, to spot fake news.
So media literacy is key.
Absolutely. And we need to hold social media platforms accountable for the content they spread.
And support independent journalism, fact-checking initiatives.
We need to fight for truth.
Colonization. What can we do to address the lasting legacy of this historical injustice?
Well, the source talks about the need for reconciliation, for reparations, acknowledging the harm that was done, apologizing for the atrocities committed,
Righting the wrongs of the past.
and supporting the self-determination of indigenous peoples, giving them control over their own lands and resources, allowing them to preserve their cultures.
Okay, last but not least, how do we combat disinformation in the digital age?
Well, We need to promote media literacy, as we discussed. But we also need to hold social media companies responsible for the algorithms they use, the content they allow to spread.
And we need to support fact-checking organizations, independent journalism, sources of reliable information.
It's about being vigilant, being critical, being informed.
So much to think about. It's a lot, but I hope it's also empowering.
It should be, because we're not powerless. We have the knowledge, the tools, the ability to make a difference.
We can choose to create a better future.
All right, welcome back, everyone. It's been quite a journey, hasn't it? This deep dive into, well, humanity's not so proudest moments. We've covered a lot, from trashing the planet to waging endless wars. And the inequality, it's staggering.
Yeah, and the thought of mass extinction, it's pretty heavy stuff.
And then there's the whole thing with technology, how it can be both a blessing and a curse, and pandemics.
Oh, and waste. We can't forget about the mountains of waste we generate.
And the way we suppress knowledge, sometimes deliberately.
It's a lot to take in, but hopefully it's also been eye-opening.
Right. The goal isn't to make you feel hopeless. It's to kind of shine a light on these issues so we can start addressing them.
So we've looked at the big picture, the kind of systemic failures that have gotten us to this point, but now let's bring it back down to earth, so to speak.
Right. What does all this mean for you, the listener? How can you take what you've learned and actually do something with it?
So first things first, a little introspection is in order, I think.
Yeah. Take some time to think about your own values, what you're passionate about, the things that really matter to you.
What keeps you up at night? What gets you fired up?
And then ask yourself, what skills do I have? What can I contribute? Even small changes can make a difference.
Exactly. It's about finding that intersection between your passions and, well, where the world needs help.
Maybe you're really worried about climate change, so you decide to bike to work more often or cut back on meat.
Or maybe you're just outraged by the level of inequality in the world, so you volunteer at a local charity or donate to a cause you believe in.
You could mentor a kid or support organizations that are fighting for social justice.
Or plant a tree. Every little bit helps. And don't underestimate the power of just talking about these issues.
Right. Start a conversation with your friends, your family, share what you've learned.
Challenge assumptions, debate ideas. You never know who you might inspire to take action.
Change doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens when people come together, when we share ideas and work towards common goals.
Think of it like a ripple effect. You throw a pebble in the water, and it creates these expanding circles.
Those ripples can travel far and wide.
So we challenge you, the listener, to do something. Anything. Volunteer, donate, start a conversation, make a conscious choice. Because the future isn't something that just happens to us.
We create it with every choice we make, every action we take.
And that's it for this deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, but it's really just the beginning.
There's always more to learn, more to explore.
Keep those minds curious, folks. And remember, you have the power to make a difference.